You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stilwell in North Carolina, and joining me this week on the show is John Stevenson, just next door in Tennessee. John, how are you?
Hey, Andrew, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
It is we're recording a little later than usual, but we've got a fun show this week, so I'm happy. We're going to have a good time, but as if you saw on social media recently, we were looking for some listener questions. And John, you've seen the list. I think we've got some good ones here.
Yeah, you guys delivered, and it was kind of last minute too. So everyone really banded together and sent us some good ones. I know we won't be able to get to all of them. We're gonna give it the old college try.
That's right. And speaking of the college try, a very good shout out to some of my buddies who are not coaster enthusiasts, but like to ask me ridiculous questions about roller coasters from time to time. A good number of those questions did make the cut, so we will be answering them on this podcast, but I promise it's not favoritism. It's just the way it goes sometimes. But the first question actually comes from a past guest of the podcast, and that is our co-host Nick Weisenberger's son, Henry. Henry is 8 years old. And he asked the question, why are roller coasters even made? John, do you have any thoughts here?
I think, dating all the way back to the Russian ice slides, I think roller coasters are made because people want to have fun. They want to have an opportunity to have that disconnect from reality and from the ho-hum days of the 15th century, whenever those ice slides were built. And now today to the same. People want experiences, they want fun, they want to get that adrenaline rush, safely, but still have that feeling that, something terrible could happen. So I think it's just that desire, that yearning for that adrenaline rush at the end of the day is what keeps people coming back for bigger and better coasters.
I couldn't have said it better. I think that kind of controlled environment, adrenaline rush, it's definitely why these companies keep making the coasters bigger and better and faster. And what I like to call these EST coasters, the tallest, fastest, longest, et cetera, et cetera. So I think everybody, those who enjoy roller coasters, and if you're listening to this show, there's a good chance that you've enjoyed at least one roller coaster in your life, unless you're Henry, and then Henry's just like, nah, I'm too cool for roller coasters. Henry's been on the show. He's like, yeah, we went to Legoland. I love the free Legos. I didn't care about the rides though. But, I'm with you. It's the controlled thrills for sure. You want to tackle this next question?
Yes. So Nathan, a coaster story, asks, what are your top international bucket list parks and why? Andrew, before I go to it, what do you think?
For me, it's always going to be Tokyo Disney Sea until I get over there. And I know Eric, who's on the podcast from time to time with us, another one of our Coaster101 co-writers, he went over there. He had a really good time. And just everything you see and read about Tokyo Disney Sea and Tokyo Disneyland and even the other parks, like Universal Studios Japan with the Super Nintendo World and all that. I would love to just go to Japan and just start riding roller coasters and visiting theme parks. I think they've got such a unique culture over there when it comes to theme parks that it's something as this just stereotypical American enthusiast who's never ridden a roller coaster outside of the country. I really want to get over to Japan, and right now I'm just going to stick to following the tweets of, I think the guy's name is TDR Explorer. Mm-hmm. His name's Chris. Yeah, if you're not following him, really good follow, because he's an expat in Japan, but because he lived there before the pandemic, he's still there. Hasn't gone anywhere, but as Americans, I don't think we can currently get into the border or cross the border. Or, one day this pandemic will end, allegedly. But yeah, for me, it's the parks in Japan. But John, what do you think?
So for me, I all the parks that I want to visit, of course, any Disney park overseas, Disney Sea, absolutely. That's also on one of my bucket list. Um, for me, I think if I had to pick one park, it would be Alton Towers, and that's for me. It was such a um, inspiration, I guess, as a kid, and I think it was if you are of the age where you grew up with Roller Coaster Tycoon, the original. You may remember, or maybe it was Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. I forget which one, but Alton Towers came like a pre-built Alton Towers came with the game. I believe that was Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. And so not only did I see Alton Towers and coaster books that I had as a kid and was just fascinated with this park that was, pretty much hidden from outside the gate because of the ordinances for the neighbors. They have to essentially build below the tree line. So that park has just always fascinated me, how they have these giant, amazing, award-winning roller coasters that you can't see from outside the park. And so to be able to kind of explore it, obviously a recreation as close as you can get with Roller Coaster Tycoon. Um, I feel like I'm the most familiar with that park, and I've just had this fascination with it ever since. And so I think, and actually, Coaster101 actually has a brick at Alton Towers that we're all hoping to get over to and see for one of their, forget what the campaign was for. This has been several years ago now. So I think that's part of the reason I would love to go there and just be able to see our brick in person. And then likewise, Blackpool is another that also was in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. And then it was both of those parks, Alton Towers and Blackpool, are just so iconic and so recognizable, and just these landmark attractions that they both have built, and throughout their history. It's just either one of those I would love to visit. Hopefully I'll get over there someday
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah, I remember when we built that, or we paid for that brick. I said we finally got to Europe only to be walked on by British tourists. So one day you'll get over there, we'll all get over there, we'll take a picture of the brick, and
Yes.
we'll be able to post it to our social media like somebody posted our brick at Indiana Beach. So
Yes. Yeah. And if you're at Alton Towers, please take a picture of our brick and send it to us.
exactly. All right. Next question. Probably a controversial question a little bit, and one of our very first episodes on this podcast was overrated and underrated coasters. John, what is the most overrated coaster you've ridden? That's my buddy Andrew. Just for the record, it's not actually me, but we call him Darvin. But he's one of my college buddies. What's the most overrated coaster you've ridden?
Okay, so I think I'm going to get banned from the coaster community for saying this, but I guess that's the point of this question. I think X2 is incredibly overrated. I've ridden it twice. I did not like it. I thought it was very uncomfortable. I didn't like the sensation. I did not like waiting over 2 hours for it the second time. I wanted to give it a second chance, though. It was with fellow Coaster101 rider Eric, who I know really likes it, as does much of the community. But for me, it's just not a fun ride, and I think that there's a reason besides its reliability issues that it's a one of a kind, or one of two.
Okay. Well, when we were talking offline, you told me you were going to answer this question with fury, and I really was going to have to ban you from Coaster 101, the community, the podcast, anywhere. So I'm really glad
I
you
would
you changed your mind. There was
Yeah,
no
I
threatening
made a
involved, I
last minute
promise.
I made a last minute pivot. I will say, I know it said roller coaster, but just to be even a little bit more controversial, most overrated attraction, or one of the most, I think, has to be Flight of Passage, Avatar Flight of Passage. I didn't even have to wait that long for it. Did not see, it was like Soarin' on steroids, and I really like Soarin', and I um, would rather ride Soarin'. So anyway,
All right.
what about you, Andrew?
Okay. This, you know, we love Cedar Point. We're all coaster enthusiasts. We love Cedar Point. The most overrated roller coaster that I've ridden is Millennium Force. And there will be there's a question later in this that I think I'm going to actually talk about Millennium Force again, but I just don't get the hype. The cable lift, it's fun, but you know what? The cable lifted Intimidator 305 is fun too. And I think that B&M Gigas are far superior to Intamin Gigas. And that's probably another controversial take, but Millennium Force, it's great. It was the best steel coaster in the world for like 15 years. But there's a reason that the best steel coaster in the world now, ever since its second year, because I know it won the golden ticket for best new ride in 2015, but has been best new coaster 16, 17, 18, 19, and 2021 is Fury 325. So it doesn't matter to me that it's my favorite roller coaster, but it is so much better than Millennium Force. And I've never gotten the hype about Millennium Force, but Cedar Point fanboys just don't come for me. It's fine.
Yeah, and I think for me, finally getting to ride it, I do agree that it didn't, blow me away like I was expecting it would just from the hype. I will say though, the view from that coaster is just for me that was elevated. If Millennium Force was plopped down in a parking lot in Nebraska, it probably wouldn't have had, I don't know, Nebraska's got pretty good views too. So, but I think the views are really what elevated that coaster for me to really something that I wanted to ride again just for the views alone. But I do agree.
You can get better views of the same lake at Waldameer going up Ravine Flyer 2. Just my opinion. Anyway, next question, John. We don't need to be canceled by the coaster community this early into the episode.
Okay, so Matt asked, which roller coaster has the best name?
Okay. I love this question just because there's so many good ways you can attack it. I think Mind Blower at Fun Spot down in Kissimmee is a really fun name. I love a good kind of pun-based name. I love the what is it? Extreme Engineering. They have that the cloud coaster that's called Fly with Flap. I think that is fantastic. Just simple, basic, incredible. But I also love, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation here, but I think the German word for roller coaster is Rutschbahnen, or I pronounce that wrong, but you see all of the like we've got articles that are like best coaster, fastest coaster by each letter of the alphabet. And Rutschbahnen was like the oldest R coaster. And I love the way that looks on paper, even though I'm saying it completely wrong.
This was a hard one for me because I'm the same. There are very much different ways to approach this question. For me, I took it quite literal. I mean, when I'm thinking of what are my favorite coaster names, like what are the coaster names that just sound cool, that sound intimidating? And it was difficult because you can be a little bit biased towards the coaster itself that it's named after. So I really tried to separate the coaster from the name. And some of the ones that I like, and some of these are a little, I love King Ka. I know that one might be a little bit overrated, the name. I love Nemesis. Like some of these are just, they just sound cool. Another one that I've always just liked, kind of silly, Furious Baco, and I think that's a fictional character. I don't know if that was named after an actual person. I'm on the Wikipedia page; it doesn't appear so, but I have always liked that name. But I mean, I think we could do an entire episode just on this because there are the names that are funny, and that's why they're the best, and then there are some that, like I said, just sound cool. There are some that are timeless. There's just so many different ways to tackle this question.
Gotcha. Next question comes from our buddies over at the Drunk Riders podcast. If you're listening to this, go listen to their show too. It's like our show, just a lot less professional and maybe a little bit more fun. Who knows? But they want to know, why are you trying to copy us? And when are we drinking for charity? I didn't realize that they had invented people asking questions on podcast, but I love those guys. They're all really good. Marcus, Mark, and Mike. So, as to when we're drinking for charity, we need to put something together. I know you guys did they did the charity drinking-a-thon with the In the Loop podcast. I think we could get together and raise some money for a good cause. So, more on that coming soon. But Next question is from Dan Stadnick, who asks, why do the bigger regional parks often wait to announce their ride closures until the end of the season as opposed to the beginning? They could do a better job of promoting come get a final ride and sell shirts and such. It's a tough sentence to say at the end, a lot of S's. John, what's your thought? I have opinions here, but I'm curious as to what you think.
Yeah, and I think some parks have done this. I think I've seen Six Flags and some other parks that do. They will say, come get your last ride. But I agree that it is a little sad, I guess, for lack of a better word, when it is kind of an abrupt closure. I mean, I think the same thing for parks when they close. Like several parks over the years that have closed, they haven't announced it until after the park had closed for the year. And I don't quite get that either, because I do think you lose an opportunity for selling that merch, for allowing people the chance to come give it one last ride. I think it might be, from a PR standpoint, if it is a beloved attraction, that they may just not want to deal with the backlash from it. Um, you know, as someone who is wanted to, in my younger years, thought, a certain wooden roller coaster in Memphis, Tennessee, that was being torn down, the Zip and Pippin. Did it cross my mind to go and chain myself to the supports to keep them from tearing it down? Maybe. So there's so many different reasons why I think a park might opt to just wait and, let it die off season, off stage. But I do appreciate and have respect when parks do allow guests and fans of the ride and enthusiasts to come and get one last ride. I think it only helps them. So it would be interesting to talk to someone who has made that decision, and what was the thought process, maybe there's something that we don't know. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we have a definitive answer.
Well, I do know it is, in talking to PR and comms people over the years, it is exclusively the PR and comms people and those who run the social media accounts who choose to take down roller coasters. So please direct all of your anger and vitriol at them. Actually, don't do that. That's a bad idea. But I I think it has something to do with the fact that you don't want to upset the apple cart, basically. And I'll use Thunder Road for example at Carowinds. It closed in 2015, and they were a park who they did kind of do kind of a last rides of Thunder Road, and I wrote some historical articles and was like, this was definitely a game changer roller coaster. It's sad to see it go, but for whatever reason, it's gone. And there are still people 7 years later to this day who are like, whoa, bring back Thunder Road, bring back Thunder Road. And it's just like, come on. What you've got in its place now is a water park, which, if you ever have listened to the coasterradio.com podcast in the back catalogs, they interviewed Will Cook at Holiday World, and he said that the water park was the reason they got to build roller coasters, because the water park would bring in the money if there's less maintenance involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you got a great water park expansion with Carolina Harbor, and you also got Copperhead Strike on that footprint. And personally, to me, I love Thunder Road. I was there on its last day of operation, but give me Copperhead Strike all day, every day, twice on Sundays over Thunder Road. But I think it's even a park like Valley Fair, for example. They announced at the beginning of the season that their Valley Scare event was becoming something that was, more family friendly. It's still going to have some scares, but Valley Scare is no more, and it's now this Tricks and Treats Fall Fest. And even like, you could turn on their TikTok or their Instagram comments, and there's always somebody saying, we're not coming back until you bring back Valley Scare. And it's like, okay, then don't come back. More or less lines for me if you're not in the park. But I think it really depends on the coaster, and it depends on the attraction. I'll use Universal Orlando as an example. Like last week, they just closed the Monsters Cafe, and I never ate there. So to me, nothing of value was lost. And then like you see like all these Orlando blogs and Orlando Universal fans who are like, oh, it was so great. I loved sitting in there during Halloween Horror Nights because it had air conditioning. And it's like, what are we doing? Are we just putting restaurants on pedestals now? So I think it really depends on the scenario and the coaster and the park. But also, if they announce it later in the season, they can get that late season attendance bump, which looks really good to investors. But that's just me. I mean, if you want to talk about Thunder Road, I remember waiting in line the last day I waited over an hour to ride Thunder Road when the year prior it was consistently a walk on. So it's just people have attachments to things, but I think, yeah, it really depends. I don't think I'm trying to think like you were able to get your last stand on, what was it, Mantis at Cedar Point for a couple of weeks, and take your last rides on Vortex at Kings Island, and I don't know. I just don't think, to use a sports reference here, I don't think anybody needs a Coach K retirement tour. Just retire and go off into the sunset with the new dog they got you. Anyway, that's
Well, it was like for me, I made a special trip and spent more money than I should have going to Islands of Adventure to ride Dragon Challenge before it closed. So because when I had been prior, my first trip to the park, I didn't ride at that point. At that time, was Dueling Dragons, and so I gave Universal a lot of money to have that experience and to go and to go ride that coaster before it closed. And they gave, I forget how long of a heads up, advance notice that they gave, but it was, I want to say at least a couple of months, if not longer. So, if I think it can be a good business decision in the right case.
it's true.
So,
I still have
all right.
my Thunder Road piece of wood that I bought on the last day. So I paid $20 for a piece of coaster wood. So
We also have a Georgia Cyclone
this is true.
wood from the Ace event. Yep. Okay.
I've got it somewhere. Anyway,
Next question from, let's see, Clint asks, how would your friends describe your favorite coaster?
well, most of my friends are not coaster enthusiasts, so they would call it the Fury, or they would say that really tall one at Carowinds, or I mean, Clint listens to the podcast and he knows it's Fury 325, and he would be able to kind of give me a little bit more information. But most of my friends who are non-coaster people, they would just give it the tall, fast green one that you can see from the highway. My friends who are coaster enthusiasts would call it a marvel of modern engineering, one of the best roller coasters in the world, the 100th roller coaster by Bolliger and Mabillard, because we're all nerds and we all know these weird stats. And then they would quote those stats to me. So, 325 feet tall, 320-foot drop, and top speed of 95 miles an hour, yada, 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 yada. That's what my friends would do.
So my favorite steel coaster is I-305 at King's Dominion, and most of my non-coaster enthusiast friends probably don't know that. They I may have told them, because that's usually the first question that people ask when they find out I'm a coaster enthusiast is, what is your favorite coaster? And my favorite wooden coaster, now kind of steel coaster, Lightning Rod at Dollywood, more people, at least where I live in Tennessee, are familiar with it just from going to Dollywood. They would describe it as, well, half the time people get it confused with Thunderhead, because when you say wood, it's just difficult concept that, two different wooden coasters. But the ones that are more familiar, I think, would say the launched wooden coaster, or they may describe it as the one that's always closed, or yeah, I think that's it. I mean, that's the wooden coaster one is, or the launched wooden coaster is, I think, obviously the most identifiable
Gotcha. Yeah,
attribute.
I think what the deal is, we just have to educate our friends on coaster enthusiast terms a little bit more, but we need to do it in a
Yeah.
way that doesn't bore them. So that's my opinion anyway. But next question comes from our buddies over at the Corkscrew Convos podcast, another really good podcast. If you enjoy this show, you'll definitely enjoy what Chris and DJ have over there. But their scenario is you have to choose one launch coaster and replace its launch with a lift hill. And then you have to choose one currently non-launching coaster and replace its lift hill with a launch. The caveat, and this, John, this goes to you. You cannot pick Lightning Rod.
Dang. Okay. So one launch coaster and replace its launch with a lift hill. So I'm going to select Top Thrill Dragster just because I would love a 400-foot tall lift hill and I would like that much time, or King Kai, either of those, just to be, because obviously there's no coaster with a lift hill at that height. And then one currently non-launching coaster and replace its lift hill with a launch. Let's see. I'm going to select Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I think that would be a launched racing coaster. And I think that's after having ridden West Coast Racers and how much fun that was. I think just adding a launch to Twisted Colossus would make it even more insane. And just I think it would be. I think you could make it a flat launch or an inclined to use the existing track. But yeah, I think those would be my two switches. What about you?
That King Cod Top Thrill Dragster thing just reeks of something that I would have built in Roller Coaster Tycoon. That's like
Yes,
lift hill, 180-degree turn, straight down drop, back to the station. So
yes.
I'm going to go with the non-launching coaster and replace its lift hill with a launch. I would actually make the second lift hill on the Beast at Kings Island a launch. I mean, this is all hypothetical anyway, and there's only one launched wooden coaster. Technically, it's wooden steel or whatever Lightning Rod's calling itself these days. But I think that second lift hill right before you go into the Helix on the Beast, if you could turn that into a launch with like some sort of overbank turn, it would really take away one of those just, I don't want to call it a boring straightaway, but those unimaginative straightaways on the Beast. And I just think that would be really fun. As far as a coaster, one launch coaster and replace its lift hill with a launch. Ooh. Or no, replace its launch with a lift hill. I think Incredible Hulk coaster at Islands of Adventure. I don't think it needs the launch. Obviously, it's really cool, and in order to make the physics of the ride work. But if you didn't have that that kind of zero G roll at the top, the launch, and I'm probably just still bitter that the old audio was taken out. That's like, warning, fluid levels dropping, go, go, go. And you hear the roar or whatever. But if you take that zero G roll out and you just dive into the lagoon, I think it would be as fun of a roller coaster. I don't think you necessarily need the launch. But I remember reading in a book when I was a kid that like they had to build like a special power grid because the launch like could have caused blackouts in the city of Orlando. I don't know how true that is, but that's that's my answer. It's just Hulk. It could be good with just a lift hill, but it is really great the way it is. And John, you've got the next question.
Okay, let's see. Brandon, Dynamic Thrills, ask, how is Magnum, and that's Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point, so good after all these years?
It's not. Next question.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I think it was fun. I don't think I wouldn't say it's the most overrated coaster, but I wasn't blown away with it. I mean, it's still open and it's an arrow, so I think it's obviously good enough for it to be still operating. But I don't know.
It's if you get it in the right seat, and I feel like any coaster you have to say give the caveat, oh, if you get it in the right seat, it's really good. It's also allegedly sinking, depending on what rumors you read. So I don't know. I wrote it a couple years ago whenever we went to Coaster Mania, and it was fine. But yeah, it was fine. But I think there are far better coasters at Cedar Point. Even something like Gemini, I enjoyed more than I enjoyed Magnum.
Yeah, same. I really enjoyed Gemini as well. It kind of was a surprise hit for me.
Yeah. And the next question is from Darwin again. He wants to know the best park for mixed groups of coaster enthusiasts and non coaster fans. So I think the scenario here is you're going to the park with, maybe a couple of your enthusiast friends, but also some of your, I hate this term, your GP friends. What's going to be a park where everybody can really enjoy themselves?
So for me, it's from experience having done that as Dollywood. I think Dollywood's a great park. It's beautiful, um, a nice mix of attractions. I mean, everyone might not like roller coasters, but everyone likes Dolly Parton. Most people like cinnamon bread. So I think it's a very well-rounded park that has definitely enough to do in a day, to fill a day if you're not a coaster enthusiast. So I think that's definitely, again, anecdotally, I've had great experiences doing that and mixing coaster enthusiast and non-coaster enthusiast.
Yeah, I think you're right. Everybody does love Dolly Parton. And Dollywood is definitely a good answer here. I was thinking of this question and it definitely kind of caused me to actually think. So I've come down to two answers. The first of which is Busch Gardens Williamsburg. And there is something truly for everyone at Busch Gardens. They've got the coaster thrills, obviously. And last week we talked about Pantheon, and Eric and I kind of dove into the different coasters. And we'll have an episode in the future here where we kind of rank our favorite Busch Gardens coasters and what we enjoy most about the park. But outside of the coasters, there's a really good mix of flat rides, but the food is good and the live entertainment. I mean, there's a reason that Celtic Fire has won the best theme park show, year after year after year after year in the USA Today polls. And I think it does traditionally well in the golden tickets as well. So I think Busch Gardens Williamsburg is a great choice. Another park switching coasts here, I would pick Knott's Berry Farm, actually,
Mm-hmm.
specifically during either the Boysenberry Festival or Ghost Town Alive, because I think, again, it's got a lot of really good, um, there's a lot of really good coasters there. But with the live entertainment and the Boysenberry Festival, there's not a lot of theme parks out there that can put together an entire food festival around a berry that was originated at that park. So I think Knott's is a really, really good choice there. So yeah, if you're on the East Coast, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, or if you're on the West Coast, Knott's Berry Farm.
Yep, 100% agree with both of those.
Yep.
All right, so next we have Matt who asks, "Do you prefer big drops or inversions?" Andrew?
Drops all day. I'm
Same.
I'm I'm getting on in my 32 years of life, and my equilibrium is not what it used to be. So give me a big drop and then probably some floater airtime at the other end of the drop, and that's gravy right there.
Yep, same. No questions asked.
Easy. Okay, perfect. And then our buddies Corkscrew Convos, and I think I might have to take this because we were talking offline, and you're not a huge festival person, but we can talk this question. They want to know, it's a festival question for somebody who knows festivals, which I think we both know festivals. Pick one regional park to steal Epcot's festival lineup, which, if you're unaware, Epcot typically has a lot of festivals throughout the year. They have four. They have the Festival of the Arts in the kind of the early or late winter. So January, MLK timeline. And then they've got Flower and Garden in the spring, Food and Wine in the fall. And then they've got a holiday celebration. So these four festivals, which regional park would you choose? And how does that park make these festivals their own? John, do you have an answer here?
I mean, I promise I'm not a spokesperson for Dollywood, but I really do think that these align fairly well with Dollywood's current offerings, and so I think that Epcot's festival, this lineup would really fit well into that park, just the infrastructure of the park and what it already has. And so I think it would be kind of an upgrade from what already is Dollywood's spectacular festivals. Obviously the holidays one is I've never been to Epcot during the holiday season, so I don't know if, I mean, the bar is set so high with Smoky Mountain Christmas at Dollywood, so I'm not quite sure if it would be an upgrade or a downgrade. But the others, I think, would fit really well into the festival landscape at Dollywood. What about you?
Um, this was tough, and I'm going to take this a unique way. And I'm going to go real back to Dollywood. It's going to be tough to do food and wine unless they allow alcohol at the park.
Yes, true.
But I want to see Kings Island take this festival on. And the reason I say
Mm.
that is because when I stayed in Cincinnati, when I was at Cincinnati last year, I went up for a wedding and I stayed at the Graduate Hotel, and all the rooms were done in kind of this pop art theme. And pop art kind of got its start in Cincinnati, believe it or not. And so I think Festival of the Arts becomes a pop art festival. And, much like the Epcot festivals, there's food booths, there's unique artist opportunities, people selling art. And I think it's a good way for Kings Island to kind of tell that, Cincinnati history a little bit. It's a park that is definitely steeped in tradition. Obviously, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. So I think a pop art festival in Cincinnati could be really good. Flower and Garden, I think you could do that similar to what Carowinds just did with the it's not Great Carolina Fest. It's the State Line Celebration, and it's just kind of a celebration of, again, local, but you can do topiaries, you can do ice carving, you can do all sorts of stuff like that. Food and wine, it becomes a Cincinnati chili fest. We're going to have Skyline, we're going to have Gold Star chili. We're going to do as many different chili items as we can at that park. And the holidays, obviously, Winterfest is amazing. I think they've got the Winterfest Wonderland Parade now, which is a fantastic parade if you haven't seen that. So I think Kings Island would be a park I would love to see that, if for no other reason than a chili festival. If the guys at Skyline Chili are listening, or Skyline Attractions rather, or both, we'll still talk about this and still make Skyline Chili the official chili of this podcast if you want to talk to us about it. But yeah, I think Kings Island would be fun there.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I could totally see that. Absolutely. All right. Next up, we've got Michael, who asked, what U.S. locality or city would be best suited for the next big amusement park opening, and what would be its theme? Andrew, what do you think?
I think the Phoenix, Arizona is an area that, it's a very fast growing metro. It's really hot. So I don't know if it craves a theme park really, but I think Phoenix would be an area that could kind of get this big park behind it. And I know that Mattel Park is going somewhere out in, I believe, Arizona. Is that right? Do you know that? No.
Seems right to me. Let me
All
look.
right, cool. We'll look it up. But yeah, I think the Phoenix metro area would be somewhere great to kind of have this next big amusement park, just because of how fast it is growing. Obviously, they've got events out there. But another one to me, and this is having been to Vegas, I don't think it would be the most ideal location, but I think a lot of tourism is coming to Vegas, staying in Vegas, and it's not the most family friendly destination because if you have kids with you, then the kids go to bed and then mom and dad are not spending money in the casino. But I would love to see a true attempt at a theme park in Las Vegas. So two very hot desert areas. But John,
Yes.
are you gonna go with the city I think you're going to say here?
So first, Mattel is opening in Glendale, which is, just a suburb right out to city outside of Phoenix. And I'm looking at the concept art for this Hot Wheels coaster, and that is a very uncomfortable looking transition there at the top of whatever's going on there at the top. Anyway, yeah, I'm a little biased, but I do think the Nashville area, Middle Tennessee, is well overdue for a theme park. If it was once home to Opryland USA, which closed in the late 90s, and to this day there is still you still have people talking about it and how much they miss it, and the fact that it was replaced by a shopping mall, and the people who made that decision, there was no real business, um, real legitimate business thinking, financial reasoning for its closure. It was like, oh, maybe a mall will do better. And so, um, and there actually is a theme park proposed for Nashville. It's still in the works, Storyville Gardens, and it's going to be an educational theme park, very immersive. I know they're still, I think, working on investors and planning, but I think it seems to have some pretty big names behind it, the last I read. And so I think it's one of those. I'm hoping there's a lot of planning under the radar that's going on. Memphis as well. I think several years ago, I did a coaster desert graphic, a post about where in the country are there coaster deserts where, you have these large areas that are, not within a reasonable driving distance of a roller coaster. And so, of course, you have a lot out in the West that are more, those areas that are more sparsely populated, but definitely Middle Tennessee, I think, would be, just with the growth Nashville's experiencing and the lack of theme park, and just it is such a fun entertainment, tourism focused city that I think a large park would do really well there.
Nice. We'll bring back Liberty Land. It's going to happen.
Yes.
All right. I love this question, and this is my college roommate Jeremy. I was telling him about this, and he just started firing questions at me. He wants to know what was the most, and this is air quotes here, war crimey thing you ever did to a roller coaster tycoon guest or staff member in a roller coaster tycoon park.
So for me, I in my previous life as a roller coaster tycoon 3 player, I guess I kind of started using the game to make movies as well. And I made a movie using a green screen, and back when I had way too much time on my hands. And the story, the plot of the story was that these two peeps from Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 were on a roller coaster, and it crashed through. It's called Beyond Pixelation. You can just go to YouTube and search Beyond Pixelation RCT3 and you'll find it. And they like crashed through the computer screen out into the real world, and I just tried to make it as terrifying for them as possible. So it was like my dog attacked them or like came close to them. I drove my mom's car over the camera, so it made it look like it was driving over them. It was, of course, they did. This was all green screen, so they weren't inconvenienced. But I think the concept of that would be very concerning to anyone evaluating my mental health. So I think that the whole plot of that story was probably the most. The whole plot of that movie was probably the most war crimey thing that I've done. What about you, Andrew?
We're going to link that in the show notes.
That's
we
probably a good
don't
idea.
even search for it. It's in the show notes. It's in the article about this episode. Go find it. Watch John's film. We'll call it filmmaking, right?
Sure. Yeah. I think the technical term is machinima. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation, but yeah, using a video game to make a movie.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, so I've got 2, and I've done the unethical. I'm not going to call it a cheat because it's very feasible in the game. You put the "Do Not Enter" sign right at the exit, and people can't leave, which is really good for the those goals where you have to have a certain amount of people in the park, and as long as the park rating's high, and you got stuff going on, if they don't leave, the numbers can only go up. But I still kind of every once in a while will play around with Roller Coaster Tycoon on mobile. And I've just got to the point now where I build these really, really long, unrealistic coasters. And I built one in the scenario was Pacifica. It is a hyper coaster. So picture again, like Magnum, which is, kind of a longer aero hyper coaster. This roller coaster is 12,330 feet long. And you have a ride time of 4 minutes and 37 seconds, 30 drops, and 20 seconds of airtime. I don't know. The meme about Roller Coaster Tycoon is I want to get off of Mr. Bones' Wild Ride, but this to me was like Mr. Bones' Wild Ride, the roller coaster, and it it says it's enjoyable, but after 4.5 minutes of the average speed of, I don't know, average speed is 23 miles an hour and the top speed at 76. After 4.5 minutes, I want to get off. So it's kind of forcing the peeps, as it were, to ride this just death attraction, basically.
Wow, that's intense. That is intense. All right, next question. Clint ask if you could move one coaster from one park to another, which and why?
Okay, I am moving. Um, it would be Mystic Timbers or Ravine Flyer 2, Mystic Timbers at Kings Island, or Ravine Flyer 2 to Carowinds, because I think that park could definitely just use a really good, just amazing wooden coaster. Um, that's to me, that's what Carowinds needs to kind of complete itself. We love Hurler. I don't think it's ever going to be RMC'd because I don't think they will take away kind of a signature park element, which is a bigger wooden coaster. Even when King's Dominion did it, they had Grizzly and Rebel Yell and Racer 75 to fall back on. So I would take a big wooden coaster and I would move it to Carowinds.
Ooh, this is a good question. I'm thinking I'm running through some scenarios and I don't so I think I would move one of the hypers at either Canada's Wonderland Behemoth or Intimidator Carowinds and move it to one of the smaller Cedar Fair parks. So Valley Fair, Dorney Park, Michigan's Adventure, one of those parks that hasn't had a major roller coaster open in quite some time. I think with those parks, with those two parks having giga coasters, I'd keep Diamondback at Kings Island just because I think that's um, I think it's different enough from, well, I think it's still with the crowds at Kings Island. I think it does a good job of eating the crowds. But yeah, I think I would take one of those hypers and send it to one of the lesser loved parks of the Cedar Fair chain.
The redheaded stepchildren.
The redheaded, yeah.
But Valley Fair and Valley Fair and Dorney do have those the Morgan hypers or close to them. So if they're not,
That's true, and I think that's they're so different. So, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm willing to vote them out of those parks or move them from those parks because they are there, and I know that they're completely different ride experiences from their giga older siblings. But just having two B&Ms that surpass the 200-foot mark, I don't know. There's just something psychological that is hard. I mean, I'm not gonna turn down another B&M by any means, but I think those would offer something so different from what the Morgans, the Morgan hypers offer. That I mean, and I honestly, I would be okay if they were, replace the Morgan hypers, but yeah, that's what I would do.
I got to get up to Valley Fair first before if we're gonna remove Morgan hypers. So I got to get up to Valley Fair first.
Yeah,
Let the record
same.
show this is hypothetical. I haven't heard anything. Yada yada yada. We don't represent a park. Don't get mad at us. Last question, because we've been talking for 45 minutes or so at this point. But appreciate everybody who sent in these questions. But we're going to close with another one from Clint. And he wants to know if you're trying to sell a casual fan on becoming a roller coaster enthusiast, what's your pitch?
So my pitch is you are instantly a member of a very large community of people who share the same passion as you, and I think because it is somewhat of a niche community, it's not as big as sports fans or any of these other more mainstream hobbyist or enthusiast groups. You have that ability to connect with other people, but then I think once you become an enthusiast and you're able to get exposure to just all of the coasters that the world has to offer, I think it really enables you to see kind of to look beyond just your immediate, look beyond your regional parks. I mean, look beyond the Disney and Universal parks and see what's overseas, and you get an idea of what's coming. You know what kind of innovations and what things are in development, so you get kind of an advance notice of things that are coming down the pipeline. I think it just enables you to have a broader view of the industry and everything that makes it so exciting. What do you think,
Yeah,
Andrew?
I think the thing about the coaster community, it is very much what you want to make it. And there are organizations by region, there's ACE, there's groups that are more casual, like Buzz Bars, there's all these coaster clubs that everybody unites around the same thing, which is being fans of roller coasters and theme parks and amusement parks and the kind of the greater industry as a whole. And again, there are certain enthusiasts for one reason or another. Either they're too nerdy or they have to outfan people or they all they care about is the number of roller coasters they've ridden and what's a credit and what's not a credit. But if you find your people in this community, and this is obviously the same for any fandom or community out there, but if you find your people who kind of have a similar standing as you, you're going to meet some really cool people. And I mean, I'll go back. I know Coaster101 is kind of its own unique animal, but going back 8.5 years at this point, I happened upon Coaster101 because they were having a photo contest and I wanted to win a prize. And then, you know, guys like John and Eric and Larry and Kyle and Nick, and I'm going to skip names, and Shane, Eric, Mike, Nick, Larry, Kyle, John, Mike. Did I get everybody? I think I got everybody. Anyway, those guys, they've become some of my really good friends. We can just kind of light up a Facebook group or a group chat with what's going on in the industry. We hang out every once in a while at parks when schedules allow, which is always fun. But, if you find your people, they're going to become some of your best friends. And it's just, again, the community, it's an extremely, for the most part, again, every community has its bad apples. It's a very welcoming community. And again, if you can kind of tune out some of the nonsense and, everybody you talk to who's a roller coaster enthusiast, they have opinions on certain things and certain people and certain websites that go inside the magic. But, yeah, it's a good time. And again, like John said, it allows you to kind of expand your horizons because, if I was not kind of a roller coaster enthusiast, there are places I would have never had the opportunity to go or even wanted to go, like, northern Pennsylvania on the shores of Lake Erie to go to Waldameer one day, or hopefully this coming weekend, I'm going to go to Adventureland in Long Island. And maybe if their new roller coasters open, I'll get a chance to ride it. So these are places that wouldn't have even been on my radar, 8-10 years ago. But because of the hobby and the, enthusiast community that we've kind of built and are a part of, it gives a new meaning to, a new reason for people to travel. And yeah, you'll meet some really cool people. And, I've mentioned a couple of people in this podcast, guys like the Drunk Riders and Corkscrew Convos, who I wouldn't know if it wasn't for the coaster community. And again, everybody has a podcast or whatever, but it's when you find a good group of people who have a similar interest as you, it's a really good feeling. That's my selling point. Man, I'm going to tear up now. I'm all emotional.
I know, man. You need to write a book or something because those are it just revs me up for my coaster geekdom. That is, yeah. I agree with everything you said. It is a really exciting community to be a part of. So
yeah, and
what?
yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Like I said, we've been talking for about 55 minutes at this point, and we'll do this again with more questions. And if we didn't get to your question, we apologize. Again, a lot of questions came in. Most of them were for my college friends, so I gotta again placate a little bit here. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. If you're unaware, we have a website. It's coaster101.com. We are also on all forms of social media at Coaster101. That's Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere that you want roller coaster social media, you can find us at Coaster101. If you're listening to this podcast, make sure you like, rate, review, subscribe, do all those buzzwords. Spotify allows you to rate podcasts now, so go give us 5 stars on Spotify, 5 stars on iTunes, 5 stars on Yelp, if Yelp will let you review podcasts, whatever. But thanks as always to Justin Mabry of JM Music Design for our theme music, and we will talk to y'all again soon. See ya.